Hello guys, Asus Gameplays, I'm Fabio Pisco, and welcome to my channel. If you follow my channel, you know that yesterday I released a video on Lossless Scaling Frame Generation 3.0 that brings better performance, lower latency, less performance costs to enable the frame generation, things like resolution scale, new scaling types, and so on, so it's a huge update, lower latency and better performance. These are the best two things that we can get in a software. Well, in a software like this, at least. Now, what also happened is that I was pretty sick yesterday, and I'm saying I was because gladly I just woke up much better than I was yesterday. I was with a bit of fever, I just woke up completely soaked, and today I did wake up a little, I would say a little wet, but that's not what I mean. And I recorded the video, I edited the video, I released the video, and I only understood that the moment you guys started commenting, well, there's a mistake here, there's a mistake there, and I was like, damn, how dumb can I be when I'm sick? So I'm making a video about the 20 times frame generation, and I'm not testing the 20 times frame generation. I didn't even test the 10 times frame generation. Why? On top of that, on the scaling type that you see here, I actually have the scaling type to Lossless Scaling 1. Meaning that the performance impact was much bigger since I was using frame generation alongside the scaling type, and somehow I didn't notice it because, again, it's like I'm using like 20% of my brain power when I'm sick, which is, you know, this just shows you how I was. But yeah, that's enough for the intro, and if you want to know more things about the release notes of Lossless Scaling in terms of performance, input latency, and so on, you can go watch the previous video where I read everything that THS, the creator of Lossless Scaling, sent me in order to show me what changed and what didn't change. So there are many things, and now we have, instead of Lossless Scaling 1.1 and 2.3, we have 1.1 for the older cards, 2.3 that allows you to select the resolution scale before, as well, but it does have the performance mode, and the 3.0 does not have the performance mode because according to THS, the 3.0 in terms of performance is more or less like the performance mode on the previous one, meaning that in theory it should be better in terms of quality since it is a new algorithm, and also at the same time have way lower input latency. Now, one thing that Lossless Scaling Frame Generation 3.0 brings is the mode. We have the x2, x3 and x4 that we did have before, but now we have the option to select a custom mode. So if you want to go crazy and go 5 times frame generation, 6 times frame generation for, let's say, 480Hz monitors, you can do it. If you want more, 10 times frame generation that we're gonna test in this video, you can go for it. And if you want even more, like 20 times, you can go up to 20 times, which is crazy. Of course, nobody's gonna use it due to the artifacts, but we're gonna test it. As you can test, today's sponsor. Today's video sponsor is GVG Mall, bringing you lots of software deals like Windows 10, Windows 11, Office 2019 or 2021 with a new Windows 11 design, and for all of these you can use my SKG discount code for 30% off, getting a Windows 11 serial key for $22 and a Windows 10 one for only $15. Then use the key on your Windows settings and you'll have an activated system. So as yesterday, we're starting with Witcher 3 and we're running FSR, let's put it to balanced, 4K FSR balanced, around 70 FPS, which is to be expected at 4K FSR balanced in this game since we're using Ultra Plus settings and it's a 7800 XT, so it's quite okay. Now, as always, you can use... Oh, the battery went down. As I was saying, if you want to use Lossless Scaling, you can just go to the application and you just can press scale and it will work, and as you can see the scaling type is now off. But you can also go, if you go to the settings, you have a scale hotkey that you can change, and in this case it's Ctrl-Alt+S, and I'm gonna use it, starting with the 2 times mode. And by the way, the frame times that you're seeing here are kind of still messed up, and you see like those little spikes and so on, and that happens because I'm recording with OBS. I reduced the settings a bit in order to make it more fair. I don't have a recording card, I never use a recording card, and I would never need a recording card besides these tests, these specific tests. That's why I didn't buy one yet, and that's the only mistake of this video right now. So yeah, Ctrl-Alt+S, and let's see, we are running around 70 FPS now. Ctrl-Alt+S, and yeah, the impact is definitely much lower. much lower than we had before because we were using the scaling, and definitely much lower. Instead of going to 40 something, we went from 70 to 52 FPS, which is still quite of a big impact for just 2 times frame generation. It's not optimal per se, but it is decent. Now, what we can do in terms of latency and so on, according to the creator, once again, is to just imagine that we're having 50 something. We can just lock, for example, at 45. Can just go, and yes, you can use Radeon Chill. Most likely I'm just using RTSS because it's easier to show you. 45, and then it will go to 90. And again, you're usually way better with just going, yeah, now it's smooth. Much better than I was using the scaling, just much better. Much better. Sorry about that. With the scaling enabled, it just wouldn't work that great. Even with 45 FPS, we do have some artifacts, definitely, but now that we locked the frames, yeah, the latency, even at 45 FPS, the latency is quite impressive. And it's much better than on the previous video that I released yesterday, actually, much better, and I can feel the smoothness way better, even at 45 FPS. I was having like 70 FPS, and going from 45 to 90 here is actually insane. Frame generation is made to be used with at least 60 base frames, so if you have 60 base frames, it will work much better, and still, it's just so smooth. One of the things that AFMF2 did much better than lossless scaling before was the latency, and with locked frame rates, even with 45 base frames, damn, it just works great. Very smooth. I don't see many artifacts at all, even with 45 FPS as base. It just works great. Man, I'm really impressed, and as I told you, I was kind of sick when I made the video yesterday and things didn't work the way I was expecting, but damn, it just works great. Definitely works great. And I would never think that 45 FPS would work so well from 45 to 90 like this. This is just impressive. Let's now try the three times, sorry. Let's go mode 3 times. Let's go into the game. Control Alt plus S. Bam. Change the scene, and now we go from 44, I locked at 45, and the performance impact is actually the same, so meaning that we went from 70 something, I believe, to 45, 50, something like that, and now we're still hovering around 45, 44, 45 FPS with the 3 times mode. And now we see some artifacts, for example, around Gerald, around Geralt, but yeah, we see some halo artifacts on the hair, for example, as we do this, as we pass through through this specific part, we do have some artifacts, and I believe that if we had at least 60 base frames and we tried the X 3 times, it would be completely fine, because it is still smooth and the artifacts aren't that bad actually, and we're still having around 45 base frames. So with a higher number of base frames, it would just work much better. I mean, we can try that, so let's disable it. We have 45, and look, 45 looks so bad compared to what we had before. It is just not smooth at all, it just looks like crap. Yeah, it just looks like crap, while the frame generated frames are just so much smoother. What you can do now is go to the settings and go maybe to performance mode. Let's see if we can handle the 55 as base. Control Alt plus S. And yeah, not really. We have 53, something like that. 53 to 150. I guess I will lock to 51 and see what we get. Disabling it. Now let's go. Oh my bad. Let's go. Try 51 for example, and now we have 51 stable, and yes, the latency is definitely better when you have locked frame rates. And yeah, we still have some halo artifacts, but I can already notice that the artifacts are definitely less. With only 6 more frames as base from 45 to 51, I can definitely notice that there are way less artifacts. So if we were running at, let's say, 60, 65, 70, I believe that's something that for 1440p and 4K you should have at least 70 base frames. If we had those, it would work much better, definitely much better. Damn, this is nice. Very good performance, guys, really. Now, just for the sake of humanity, let's try the custom time, and let's try something like 10 times, just to see how it works. I know it makes no sense actually, but I just want to see how it works, and I should be testing it because that's one of the things of this frame generation. So we're having around 80 FPS, and it should, let's see how much FPS it actually decreases. So 85, 82, 84, 83, 85, 88, 89, so it's kind of balancing, but I would say around 85 FPS. So Control Alt plus S, and from 85 we got it reduced to 47, and odd because this is supposed to be the 10 times, so it should go to 400 FPS, not 180, and oh my goodness, it is completely bugged. I guess it is bugged completely. Look, we didn't go to 400 FPS, we went to 180, and yeah, we have lots of artifacts. Look at this. This is just insane. So let's try 20 and see how it goes. So 20 times lossless scaling frame generation, and we are still going to 180. Maybe it's locked or something. Just doesn't really look at this. So it should be going to like from 40, it should be going to like 800 FPS, but it isn't going. It's going like to 180, and it's completely messed up as soon as I move the camera. Yeah, completely messed up. I don't know if this is a bug, but it is really messing with my head right now. Crazy indeed. So Control Alt plus S, disable it, and we're back to 80-90 FPS. Now we're running Alan Wake 2, which is a pretty tough game to run, especially on the forest parts. Now, for example, in the new the Lake House DLC, and as you can see, we only have the LSS frame generation. We don't have any more frame generation because it is what it is. Alan Wake 2 will get the LSS 4, but it is still using FSR 2, which is a pain in the ass and pretty disrespectful for the community of gamers. But yeah, I love Remedy games, but they're extremely biased. So even on this part, using this, we're getting like 58, 59. We should be having more FPS if we're not recording, of course. Control Alt plus S, bam, and we had around 50 something, and we now still have around 50, 40 something, 50 something, but we go to 90. And yes, it is much smoother. The experience is just much smoother. Not even comparable. Not even comparable, just much better. And again, we're running at a 40 something base FPS, and we don't really have much visual artifacts even with such a low base frame rate, which is actually impressive. Let's try and go to the resolution scale and go resolution scale to like 80, and as the resolution option says, it processes the input frames at a reduced resolution and generates output at the original resolution, which seems to me like upscaling, even though somebody was saying it was not. Now Control Alt plus S, bam, and yeah, the FPS are higher. It was at around 30 something, and now it is 42, so yes, the base frames are higher, and even though we're using the resolution scale lower, honestly, the quality seems pretty fine. And now we lock the frames to 40 FPS and we go from 40 to 80. And definitely looks smooth. And definitely much smoother than playing at 50 FPS. So if I had to tell you, in between playing at 50 real FPS or going down to 40 and then using lossless scaling to play at 80, definitely much better using lossless scaling and playing at 80. I mean, as soon as you lock the frame rates, the amount of input latency that gets reduced is just insane, and overall, I mean, this doesn't feel like 80 FPS in terms of input latency, but definitely doesn't feel as 40 FPS as well. Just feels okayish. It isn't the best experience that I had so far, but it looks quite great. Bam, we now have 40 locked. Look at how 40 FPS locked looks. Just crazy bad. We go to the application. We try the 2x mode as well, maybe with 90 resolution scale, and what we can try now is go and reduce the game settings in order to have more base frames here. What we want is just more FPS, doesn't really matter the rest, it's just a test. So 0, and now we have 89-90, which seems very nice. So let's try and lock it to 60, I believe it will work fine. Lock it to 60, now that we reduce the settings. Now Control Alt plus S, and we should go to 120. Yes, from 60 to 120, and yeah, it just looks so much better. Yeah, Damn! Lossless scaling from 60 to 120 or using 80 FPS base, it is just much better to use lossless scaling with 60 FPS. Even moving the mouse fast. Yeah, and the latency is actually pretty acceptable. I'm moving the mouse really fast and it's pretty acceptable. The latency has definitely been improved. I mean, damn. From 60 to 120, definitely a great experience, and that's what you should look into. And if you have, for example, a 240Hz monitor, you should definitely look into using, for example, the 3x mode. So 60, we go off, bam, and we stay at 60. Then we can go, for example, and go to the 3x. Let's try the 3x mode. Control Alt plus S, bam, and we go from 60 to 180. So if you have a 180Hz monitor, and by the way, the latency is even better now, and if you have a 180Hz monitor, yeah, it will just look great. In terms of artifacts, let me see with 60 base frames. I can't really see the smoothness because this monitor is only 138 Hz. We do have some inconsistencies here and there, but otherwise, looking pretty neat. But now let's go nuts. Bam. And again, yeah, we don't really have that amount of frames. We go from 60 to 200 and it just doesn't go to where it was supposed to be. Remember the frames that we had before at 10 times, the issues? Well, they aren't that bad at 6 times. We do have some, yeah, it has some issues with Windows, for example, transparent pixels. We have some halos, but 6 times isn't that bad. Let's try the 10 times just for the fun of it. And I don't really know why, but it seems to not be working. 60 base frames, Control Alt plus S, bam. And it goes from 47, 50 something to 200 and to, yeah, it should be going to like 500 FPS, but it seems like it's capped or something. And yeah, we have lots of artifacts, but since we have a higher base frame rate now, instead of having 40 something or 30, we have 59. So in terms of artifacts, they are super bad, but they are not as bad as they were before with The Witcher 3. Now let's go to 20 times. It should be even better. So Control Alt plus S, bam. And we're still going to 200 FPS. It really seems like it's capped to 200 FPS, at least here in my machine, and I don't really know why. And even if you look there on the right, even the amount of artifacts there is just insane. And as soon as I start moving, yeah, again, it looks like a magic mirror. I'm getting like motion sickness just for watching this. But yeah, it doesn't really work as it should. If you want to go to the 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 times mode, it is just working fine. And remember, this is just 60 FPS, and it doesn't look that great, honestly. But as soon as we use lossless scaling for the 2 times mode, just from 60 to 120, Control Alt plus S, I mean, it's just a world of a difference. The artifacts are like minimal. The input latency is actually quite good as well. And man, the smoothness is just much better. The game gets much more playable like this, like just with a click. And well guys, that's all for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. This is just a complement of the previous video since I did some mistakes and I tested the 10 times mode, the 20 times mode, and now I tested with the scaling off, and I can tell you right away that yeah, it looked much better. Even in The Witcher, going from 40 to 120 FPS, it was like it was kind of a decent and pleasant experience, much more than I thought. And this means that the quality improvements that they said they did in third-person games like The Witcher 3 and the latency improvements that they said they did were quite real, because I remember going from 40 FPS to 120 in some previous games that I tested with lossless scaling 2.3 or 2.1, and it wasn't a good experience. While with this one, the lossless scaling frame generation 3, the experience is actually enjoyable, at least in the games that I tested, of course. And in Alan Wake, yes. As for the 10 times and 20 times, or even something over the 4 times, yeah, it seems that it is bugged somehow, something is happening, and yeah, just don't use it. Maximum, like, 6 times, and that's pushing it. If you have like a 600 hertz monitor and if you want to go to, let's say, 100 fps to 600, maybe that's an option, but you need a high base frame rate in order to not have many visual artifacts. Otherwise, lossless scaling again, pretty much recommended, especially the 2 and 3 times mode. Anything over that will cause, well, visual artifacts that even the most newbie user can notice. Thank you very much, guys, once again for watching, and see you in the next video. Cheers.